how long it's been that we've been getting together. But I remember the first time it was on Bevel Road, and I was scared to death. And I talked about the First Amendment. So that was about 15 years ago. A number of you who know me have asked me, you know, what I've been up to and how I've been doing. And this is a little terse because there's some history to some of this. When I tell you my health is fine, some of you have a notion about, oh, good. My mom will be 102 in July, and I will see her on my way back. She's been in the Alliance retirement and nursing facility in DeLand for going on 5 years now, and she still works crossword puzzles, and she's a wonder. My recent doings including officiating at the first wedding of my 46-year-old daughter to a very fine guy who sells RVs at Giant Recreation World up in Ormond Beach, and the wedding was on the beach with their 3 dogs and about 35 people. It was I was just pleased as punch, and being the only parent made it that much more important, and it went well. Now, very recently on Wednesday, well, I just came back from California. I gave a lecture at Whittier College, where, as some of you know, one of our presidents was a graduate. And the lecture I gave was on the subject of truth. And I was able to speak on the subject because in the new and expanded Handbook of Christian Theology, in that handbook, with regard to the subject of truth, I am the author of truth. I've had fun with that for a long time. On Wednesday at Whittier College, we went to the University of Southern California where my friend Joe was on a panel, and this is really trivia, and my friend from Pittsburgh is not here today. I hope he's all right. But we spent 5 hours with the Cy Young Award winner of the Major League Baseball in 1960. Who can name that person? 1960. Best pitcher in Major League Baseball.
Jim Palmer.
His nickname was Deacon. He won 3 games in the 1960 World Series as the Pittsburgh Pirates beat the despised New York Yankees in 7 games when who hit the home run? Bill Mazeroski in the bottom of the 9th won the World Series. And it was Vernon Law who we spent 5 hours with, and he would have no part in what I am about to say or in the responsive reading we just did, because he is a devout Mormon, and there is no doubting or you're in trouble. Great guy though. And then on the last thing I'll mention to you is on Friday, I had a session with 2 women at whose wedding I will officiate. That'll be a first for me on the 30th of this month. So, it's been so long since I've been here, and when I was asked, what's your subject, I thought, oh, what am I going to do? And I thought about talking about the spirituality of the presidential candidates and why that matters. I've done that sort of thing before. And it does matter. It matters more than it did 20 or 30 years ago. It matters a lot because faith has implications for what you think and do. And then I thought about why don't I talk about the fastest growing version of religion in the world today? And that would be Pentecostal Christianity. And I could talk about Ted Cruz in that talk. And that is one of the strangest things. Do you remember storefront churches? I mean, most of you are of an age where you go back, that we had storefront churches, and very often they were these very emotional versions of Christianity in the storefront churches. These are now the mega churches that dominate American religion by far. It's hard to believe. In fact, I'm sure some of you are saying, what is he saying?
Yeah.
But I decided not to do that. I decided at my age, I'll be 74 pretty soon, that I need to talk about something that I have some experience with. And there's no doubt about the fact that the subject of doubt has been a central part of my academic and my ministerial life. Now, for somebody who came into faith as a fundamentalist, worse, Baptist, it seems kind of contradictory that doubt would be a central part of my thinking, my acting, and my speaking. But the more I thought about it, I know when it began. It began when I was 18 years old. I graduated from high school. I was a freshman at the University of Pittsburgh, studying chemical engineering. A science guy, like Bill Nye.
Yeah.
That's an NPR insider comment. And in the Pittsburgh Press, there was an op-ed by a judge who was one of the judges at the Nuremberg trials in the late 1940s. This judge was from my hometown. It was Justice Michael A. Musmano. The Musmanos ran the Catholic funeral home in town too. They were an iconic family. And he was a sage guy, well respected. And in this op-ed, he blasted the youth of the day. Now I'm 18 years old. The youth of the day for questioning the ideas of their parents. And what they need to do is shut up and listen to their parents who are older and have all the experience and they know more, and stop having these wild and crazy ideas. So I wrote a letter to the editor in which I kindly criticized this iconic figure from my town, the little town outside of Pittsburgh where we live, and said that if we don't question, we can't think, we can't learn. I'm a science student. If you don't ask questions and look for new knowledge and fresh knowledge, you're missing out on what it's all about. I never heard from the justice, thank goodness. In fact, when I saw it in the paper, I was scared to death. And that was the way the doubt subject began. Questions. So, in Baptist life, the most popular sign on the church out front is not about questions. It's about answer.
Yeah.
And it is blank is the answer. Jesus is the answer. And the church functions to provide you with information that is religiously true and will guide your life. And what you are supposed to do is sit where you are and listen and then go do. So, when I come out of of science and go into the ministry, that was one of the stupidest things I ever did, because I gave up being rich for being poor. But I've never regretted it. So it was with this questioning mentality. As a minister, I knew what people were thinking. They were wanting me to tell them what they already believed and to reinforce what they already believed and inspire them to continue to believe what they knew they should believe and which was true and nobody questioned. I didn't last very long in the pastorate. And as a matter of fact, I was a pastor of not one church, but two. I almost got run out of town. That can happen in Baptist life. You can get fired and all that. So,
the only place.
There is this question and answer kind of thing. Well, that leads me to the New York Times, because that's where I got this idea. On March 27th, recently, in the New York Times, there is an op-ed column in it by a philosophy professor from Oxford. That's not in Ohio, that's across the pond. And the title is, God is a Question, Not an Answer. Well, the following Sunday, this is the letters to the editor. The entire column are excerpts from letters of people saying yay and no and, going at it. So I decided, maybe I ought to talk about doubt. And so, there is no doubt that being absolutely certain has many, many benefits. And that's the first thing I want to tell you, because I once participated in a version of Christianity, fundamentalist, dispensationalism, just let all that go. But I was absolutely certain that the Bible was the literal words of God. And what you needed to do was read the Bible, listen to what it said, believe it, and you would have happiness, you would live the right way, you would do the right thing, and you would have eternity waiting for you at the end. These were givens, and I think there are a lot of versions of faith which people latch onto because it gives them that kind of certainty that you don't have in a regular, normal living. There are just certain givens. It's kind of like in geometry, 10th grade geometry. I remember this. I was a math minor in college too. I loved that kind of thinking because it is the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. There is no doubt about that, unless you get into other kinds of geometry that I didn't understand that. And those axioms, these are the facts. When you have those, your faith is true, you don't have any doubts. You've got the 10 Commandments and the Sermon on the Mount, and that's the way you live. And you feel assured. The song was Blessed Assurance. And I lived in that, and it was good. It was really good. All right. Yeah. I already had this science questioning thing, but that was in another world. Faith was totally different from that. And I had this no worries, no doubts, absolute There was a reason for everything, and there was a plan. There's a plan. Everything happens for a reason. It's a part of the plan. And what you need to do was get in line with God's plan for you. There I was. I have to tell you, it was a fabulous way to be. I mean, you almost got cocky about it, but that was pride, and you weren't allowed to do that. But there was. It's like trying to have a conversation with Jehovah's Witness who comes to your door. These folks are absolutists, like many religious people. You can't have a conversation. It's scripted. Having a dialogue with Mormons. I'm the co-author and co-editor of one of the few dialogues between Christians who are not Mormons. Mormons claim they're Christians, and that's not a subject that we need to be bothered with. But it's hard to have an open conversation with an LDS person. That's Latter-day Saint person. And it's true for a lot of the so-called conservative people that you know. All right, so that was great. All right, now this is just going to be a footnote, but what led me to something else? The hell of life, basically. When you sell out to God, you've given everything to God, and believe me, I was more enthusiastic about that than the most rabid Pentecostal evangelist. I'd be witnessing to you, Charlie, about your sorry soul going to hell. It's okay, Charlie. I'll change my mind. All right. Just the footnote was, I had some very tragic things happen in my life that didn't fit the plan. I had no way of dealing with why I had a life-threatening disease and almost died from it, and it didn't expect to live until I was 30 years old. It made no sense to me, and it got me just, what? All right. In the reading we had today, faith and doubt go together. My introduction to that, and I believe that's true. I mean, what we read makes all the sense in the world to me. And it was Paul Tillich, who I'm the co-author of an introduction to his thought. That's a footnote. I get 50 cents for every book I sell. Amazon.com, look me up. He says that doubt is the underside of faith. And the reason is basically this. Why is doubt indigenous? And it is a part of faith. It's not the opposite of faith, which is what when you're in you're absolutely certain doubt is of the, can I use the word devil here? It's of the devil. The reason doubt is incipient, that's one of those university words, is because faith is a personal choice. You don't grow in faith. Faith is something you personally absorb. You may have been reared in a certain tradition, but you have to accept it for yourself. All right? There's an I. You. It's personal. You make a choice. You make a choice to be a person of faith. And Thomas Merton said that it's like, I can read it. Thomas Merton, faith is a decision, yes it is, a judgment that is fully and deliberately taken in the light of a truth that cannot be proven. And that is true about the basics of religious faith. It can't be proven. It is not merely the acceptance of a decision that has been made by somebody else. And because it's personal, and if you think about you as a person and ask yourself, can I make a decision? Can I opt to believe something and live in a certain way and be sure that this is the true way and the true path? Yes, you can, if you agree to the fact that you are without fault and error. You are, let's see, what is the Pope?
Infallible.
Infallible. I mean, this is Roman Catholic theology. When the Pope teaches the faith, it's not everything the Pope thinks it is, fallible or infallible. It's on matters of faith. So, even though you feel satisfied, you're happy with your way, you believe it's true, it might not be. And you got to deal with that at some level. If you don't deal with it, you may be living in error. That was in our reading. It is true. Doubt gives you the prospect of finding something better or truer or more satisfying. Kierkegaard, which is quoted in today's article. Nobody knew I was going to mention Kierkegaard. Søren Kierkegaard is a Danish philosopher, and he invented a phrase that when I was coming along and began thinking about all these things, I was introduced to, that faith is a leap. You kind of jump out there and you don't know where you're going to fall. You don't know if you're going to swim or drown. You're taking a chance. And so, in a world in which you can have this absolute certainty, but it's phony. It's not true. Anybody who says they have the absolutes when it comes to matter of faith, it's impossible unless they are infallible. Now I can tell you that taking the role of being infallible is a lot of fun. As a college professor with 18-year-olds, a lot of them thought, and then I was ordained. And in the military, which may be even more authoritative for some of them, what I said they considered as true. That's it. That is really a good place to be, if you want to feel good about yourself. But when you come to the realization that you're as fallible as somebody else, you kind of have the situation where, okay, it's not absolute, I'm not certain. Does that mean that nothing matters? Is the opposite of certainty uncertainty? It isn't. And what I think makes all the sense, and I think this is a you thing with regard to reason and faith being reasonable, is that we can't have absolute certainty, and you can't live without having some functional thoughts about what you think is true and how you ought to live, and to feel reasonably good about the way it's working out, you have to negotiate that. And I invented a phrase, and I used this in my PhD dissertation at the University of Chicago, which was on the subject of faith and doubt. And I concluded in 240 pages, at the end, when it's all said and done, that the best we can have in our faith, no matter how firm or how shaky it is, the best we can have is mellow certainty. You have to have some kind of functional certainties, or you wouldn't do anything. You couldn't be anybody. There has to be something. But don't get too fired up about it being the way, truth, and life. That's a Bible comment there. It's mellow. And you walking by faith is trusting in something that cannot be proven. That's what makes it faith. And so I conclude with nothing profound, except that when you get to where you have some of these beliefs, and there are certain ways of being in the world, and you're going to go out there, and there's certain political, go back to the candidates, there are certain political ideas that you have which you think are true and just, and you act upon them. And you do it with humility. Doubt enables you to never be too arrogant, as I once was when I was an absolutist. And the thing that really helps you is that you do not believe alone. You do not walk alone. You walk with others, and that's what the beloved community, that's what the congregation functions to enable you. And so what am I going to do? I am going to do what Voltaire said in Candide. When I leave here, I'm going to stop at Lindley Nursery, and I'm going to see what is growing in their garden. And I might take some plants home and tend to my own garden with my raccoons, with the occasional bear that knocks over the bird feeders, 10 feet away from my back door, and think about what candidate am I going to really work for? Faith is practical, and you work on it, and it can be satisfying, even though it might not be as accurate or true as you wish it would. But I think we're stuck as human beings with something like that. I wish I could be more certain in this talk, but